In the shadowed depths of the forest known as the Valewood, a village lay hidden from the world. The people of Raventry lived under the darkened canopy of ancient trees, their homes built from timber and stone. But the village bore a secret, a pact made long ago with the ruler of the shadows, the demon Lord Malachar. To keep the village safe from his wrath and to ensure their harvests thrived, a bride was chosen every 20 years to wed the demon. No one knew what happened to the chosen bride, for none had ever returned. Lilith, a young woman of 19, had always felt the eyes of the villagers on her. She was different. Her mother, a woman from another land, had been the last chosen bride, and Lilith had grown up under the suspicion that her bloodline was cursed. Her father, a man broken by the past, had tried to protect her, but Lilith knew her fate was sealed. When the time came, the villagers offered her up as the next bride. Lilith walked through the forest, the moonlight casting silver beams through the tangled branches. Her white gown dragged through the mud, and her hands trembled as she clutched the pendant her mother had left her. The pendant bore a symbol she did not understand, a spiral etched in the shape of flames. As she neared the blackened gates of Malachar's fortress, a chill gripped her. The fortress was a ruin of twisted stone and iron, a place that seemed to feed on fear. She entered, her heart pounding, determined to confront the demon who had claimed her mother and now sought to take her. The air turned frigid, and she felt his presence before she saw him. Malachar emerged from the shadows, his eyes like burning coals and his skin the color of ash. His voice, a whisper of smoke and fire, echoed through the hall. "You come willingly, bride of Raventry." Lilith's voice did not waver. "I am here to end this curse," Malachar laughed, a sound that reverberated through the walls. "Many have tried, but none have succeeded. You are bound to me as your mother was. The pact cannot be broken." For months, Lilith remained in the fortress, learning the ways of her new life. Malachar's power was immense, and she realized that his dominion stretched beyond the physical realm. He controlled the shadows themselves, manipulating them like puppets. But Lilith was not without her own cunning. She had discovered the secret her mother left behind. The pendant held a fragment of Malachar's true name, a piece of the puzzle that could destroy him if the full name was uncovered. Lilith pretended to submit, feigning affection and curiosity. She asked Malachar about his past, his realm and his power, piecing together fragments of information. Over time, Malachar's guard lowered, and he grew fond of his new bride, seeing in her a reflection of her mother's spirit. One night, as they stood in the darkened garden of the fortress, Lilith kissed Malachar, and in a whisper, she revealed what she had discovered. "Your power is tied to your name, isn't it? You fear that one day someone will speak it and end you." Malachar's eyes darkened, and the air grew heavy with tension. "You know nothing, foolish girl." But Lilith smirked, her eyes alight with determination. "Oh, I know enough." Lilith had prepared for this moment, and the shadows surged at her command. She had learned to harness the darkness, just as her mother once had. The two clashed, their power shaking the fortress walls. Malachar's rage was palpable as he unleashed his fury, shadows forming claws and fangs that lashed out at her. She fought with everything she had, wielding the shadows as weapons. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur, and the darkness flickered with bursts of fire and shadow. Lilith's movements were swift, her determination unwavering, but Malachar was a force beyond anything she had faced before. His power, fueled by centuries of souls, threatened to consume her. Just as Malachar pinned her against the cold stone wall, his hand tightening around her throat, Lilith whispered the last piece of his name, a revelation she had learned from the markings in the pendant. "Zarakov." The shadows recoiled, and Malachar screamed, his form fracturing like a shattered mirror. Lilith felt the darkness drain from him, and with one final surge of strength, she pushed him back, the shadows consuming his form. But as Malachar faded, his eyes locked onto hers. "You think you've won, but your curse has only begun." As the fortress crumbled around her, Lilith stumbled back to the village, her heart heavy, but her steps confident. She had done it. She had defeated Malachar, breaking the curse that had plagued her ancestors for generations. The villagers emerged from their homes, eyes wide with awe and gratitude. They hailed her as a hero, their voices rising in a chorus of cheers. But as she stood among them, basking in the fleeting relief of victory, a cold sensation washed over her. A whisper in the back of her mind. The villagers' eyes were not filled with pure joy. Lilith noticed their smiles were strained, their cheers hollow. And then she saw it. A flicker of shadow in their gaze, an echo of the darkness she had seen in Malachar's eyes. As the crowd parted, an old woman stepped forward, her face creased with age and wisdom. She was the village elder, the keeper of the village's secrets. "Lilith," she whispered, her voice like a dry leaf crackling underfoot. "You have freed us, but the shadows must have a master." Lilith's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" The elder's eyes, once human, now gleamed with the same darkness Lilith had fought against. "The pact is not broken. It is merely transferred. The darkness must reside within a vessel, and you have now taken Malachar's place. You are now the keeper of the shadows." The villagers' smiles turned to sneers, their faces twisted with malicious glee. Lilith felt the air tighten around her, the shadows shifting and swirling, pulling her in. The power that had once belonged to Malachar was coursing through her veins, but it felt different now, hungrier, more insidious. It wasn't just power, it was a hunger for control, for dominance. Lilith staggered back, clutching her chest as the shadows seeped into her skin. Her hands burned with cold fire, her veins turning black. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness, her vision blurring as the world twisted around her. "No," she cried, but it was too late. She could feel herself changing, the darkness consuming her soul, threading through every part of her being. She was no longer just Lilith. She was something more, something far worse. The darkness whispered ancient secrets, tales of power and vengeance, coaxing her to accept her new role. As her vision cleared, she saw the villagers bowing before her, their eyes devoid of the humanity they once possessed. They were bound to her now, as she was to the darkness. The forest around them seemed to bend in submission, the trees groaning as they bowed to their new queen. The elder spoke again, her voice no longer frail but laced with authority. "You are the Shadow Queen now, Lilith. The curse will live on through you, and the villagers will serve you for eternity, their souls bound to your will. The power that once belonged to Malachar now courses through you, but it demands a price. You must feed it, nurture it, or it will devour everything you love." Lilith's heart sank as the truth settled in. She had not freed the village. She had simply enslaved it with a new master. The shadows, now her own, clawed at her insides, whispering dark promises and feeding off her fear. Her fingers tingled, and when she looked down, she saw black veins spreading up her arms like a spider's web. The shadows were a living entity, and they craved one thing: power. She stumbled back, her eyes wide as the ground beneath her feet began to blacken, spreading out like an ink stain. The villagers stepped back, but their expressions remained unchanged, their loyalty now unquestioning, their faces blank as if puppets to her will. A voice echoed in her mind, Malachar's voice, laced with mocking laughter. "You thought you could escape the curse, little one? The darkness has always been a part of you.
Your mother knew it, and she left you to it.
The power is yours now, and it is eternal." Lilith screamed, clawing at her skin as if to tear the shadows from her body, but it was futile. The darkness was a part of her now, woven into the very fabric of her soul. Her eyes, once a warm shade of brown, turned black as the night, and her once gentle face twisted into a mask of rage. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I won't become like him." But the darkness laughed, its voice entwined with her own. "You already are." The villagers chanted her name, their voices a droning hymn of allegiance as the darkness enveloped the entire village. The trees of the Valewood grew taller, their branches stretching like clawed hands toward the sky, blocking out the moonlight. A storm brewed above, lightning flashing in the distance as the forest transformed into a kingdom of shadows. Lilith felt her heart harden, the last remnants of her humanity slipping away. She could see the faces of the villagers, people she had known all her life, now bowing in subservience. She felt their fear, their devotion, and a sick thrill pulsed through her. The power was intoxicating, and the shadows craved it. With a wave of her hand, she watched as the villagers sank to their knees, shadows wrapping around their throats like chains. They were hers to command, hers to control, and deep down, she felt a twisted satisfaction in their obedience. The darkness whispered promises of endless power, of dominion over not just the village, but the world beyond. But there was a price. The shadows demanded sacrifice. To maintain her power, to keep the darkness from consuming everything, she would need to feed it. Her eyes scanned the villagers, and a cruel smile spread across her lips. The pact required blood, souls bound to her will, drained to nourish the shadows. Her transformation complete, Lilith stood tall, the once frightened girl replaced by a creature of pure darkness. She was the Shadow Queen, the embodiment of the curse she had fought so hard to destroy. The power surged through her, the thrill of control and dominion whispering in her veins. And as the storm raged above, she raised her hands, and the shadows surged forward, pulling the villagers into their depths, consuming their souls. The forest echoed with their screams, and Lilith watched with cold detachment. This was her kingdom now, and her reign would be written in blood.